It's Sunday, March 31st, 2019. You're listening to the Leafs Convo podcast, the Sunday Spectacular, brought to you by Vanguard Northeast Realty in Toronto, VanguardNE.ca, Norman James in London, Ontario, Mike Augello in Buffalo, New York. Hello, sir. How are you? How are you feeling after that 4-2 Leafs loss in Ottawa?
Oh, just infused with confidence. Good morning, Norman. Yeah, I mean, the last 5 games of the season, I'm not expecting this team to really, step up and put on a show, because I think right now the concerns are, get everybody healthy, get everybody back in the lineup, get ready for Boston. But last night, against a team that they clearly don't like, because they're rivals and because, Ottawa has played pretty well against them. From memory, I think this was the third victory of the 4 games. I think they beat them once. But they haven't played well against one of the worst teams in the league. And Ottawa has a bunch of players that I think, right now they don't have a ton of talent. They have a lot of young talent that's going to come around in the next year or two. But right now they have a ship of rats. Yeah. Pajot. Brady Tkachuk is a really good young player, but he loves to get underneath the skin of the opposition, like his brother Matthew does. And you saw the little petty antagonisms last night. Tkachuk sticking Austin Matthews slashing back with a stick, Andreas Janssen getting pissed off. Nazem Kadri got into a little bit of scrum at the, to some point that's good. That's getting the blood flowing, but you could see those little antagonisms got under the skin and affected the Leafs. The Leafs took penalties based on some of these little incidents. And that's not good when you consider that team is a bunch of amateurs, and the Boston Bruins playing that type of game are pros.
What are the Maple Leafs?
They do that.
What are the Maple Leafs, Mike? And what do the Senators have that the Leafs lack and could probably use going into their April 10th showdown with the Boston Bruins?
Well, I made the comment on Twitter after the game that, okay, you have Kadri, you have Hyman, and last night you saw that Janssen has got an edge to his game. He's
I like
not
it.
A big player.
So what?
But
Bring it. The Leafs have barely any of it, and they need it. So if anybody wants to go down that road and continue to play with skill, but add another element to their game, it is welcome, because the Leafs certainly require it.
But the rest of the roster, do they have a pulse? And for certain players, it's like it's better for Austin Matthews and John Tavares as key players to turn the other cheek. Let somebody else fight the battles. And the thing is, like when John Tavares knocked down Tom Wilson earlier in the year in a game against the Caps, and everybody was like, oh, how great is that? No, it's not great, because your star players having to stick up for his team. I mean, you want that, but you also don't want them to have to carry that burden. This is something that other players on the team should be doing. And other than Kadri, and he hasn't been doing it a lot this year, but I think he's ramping that up, and him being a chatterbox later in the season. Him, Hyman, and Janssen. Other than that, who is pushing back? Who is doing anything? And that, we know we're going to see that from the Bruins in spades. It's going to be Marchand. It's going to be Backus. It's going to be Jake DeBrusk. It's going to be Chara with the massive Chara. I mean, that's something that's missing, and I think it's something that Kyle Dubas is going to have to add and address over the coming years, because you need that edge, you need that spark on your roster, and the Leafs really don't have it.
This is the Leafs Combo for Vanguard Northeast Realty in Scarborough. Vanguard, inside the comment section right now while you're listening, what about that Ottawa game that you witnessed makes you feel positive and secure about what the Leafs will bring to the table April 10th against the Bruins? Right now, inside the YouTube comment section. Mike, the Leafs are good. The Leafs are good at playing shinny. When you're in a 3-on-3 overtime with these guys, I mean, it's a lot of fun. When they have to put the pedal to the metal and have to control the puck and generate chances, it's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. There were some individual efforts last night that if we were doing a skills competition at intermission, trying to fill the gaps during some sort of a big talent showcase, they would pull people out of their seats. We saw some of the moves that Austin Matthews made, Marner, Tavares, the exalted William Nylander. I mean, playing from the perimeter and dancing around. He did a couple of nice things that didn't result in anything. That's all fine and dandy. But to be honest with you, I don't know on which planet we think that kind of those individual efforts that result in not much and an exchange of chances in a game of shinny over a case of beer is going to help this team, beat the Boston Bruins and take that step towards winning a Stanley Cup. Mike, I want to be positive. I want to be positive, but I have to feel positive based on what I'm witnessing and what we're seeing collectively. It's extremely difficult right now, Mike. It's difficult because we have to be honest with ourselves. And if you are truly honest with yourself, you're not in fear of what the Boston Bruins are going to bring because you just got to go for it. But you can't feel confident that this Maple Leafs team is all of a sudden going to flip a switch and go completely bananas and run the Bruins out of the arena. It's not happening.
Well, in the positive category, and not in a shinny game, but in an actual NHL game, I thought Travis Dermott in his first game back looked pretty good. And they're going to need that because I wrote about this yesterday. There's some talk that the Leafs in the playoffs may go 11 forwards and 7 defensemen, because that would give the 3 top centers more ice time. Kadri, Tavares, Matthews, sit Freddie Gauthier, and with the unstable and uncertain status of Jake Gardiner, if he does come back, they may want to limit his ice time. But the problem is that the guy who they will put in as the 7th defenseman will probably be Martin Marincin. And if it's Martin Marincin,
oh man,
we know what we're going to get. I mean, I would personally, without seeing him play in the NHL this year, and we're going to see this on Monday, I would put Calle Rosen as the extra defenseman if they go that way because he can carry the puck and he has played very well with the Marlies. And Martin Marincin again last night on the second goal was completely clueless and completely out of position. And that's the norm for him. So even if he's a special.
What is this about Martin Marincin being the norm? That's offensive. I'm the norm. Don't tie me into this guy's sick world.
Yes. Well, what I'm saying is his being bad defensively is the norm, not you.
A lot of our OG listeners have no sense of humor, so they'll probably won't get that, and I'll get raked over the coals. Mike, I'm thinking about the Boston series, and I'm going to watch it and try to enjoy it, and they'll surprise potentially, and we'll have a lot of fun. But with the Calle Rosen news and Travis Dermott coming back and knowing that Jake Gardiner's time as a Toronto Maple Leaf is going to be coming to an end, I'm thinking now about the Leafs defensive core for next season and beyond, Mike. And we can get into it. We're going to talk about it ad nauseum as the podcasts progress going forward. But Calle Rosen, just real quick on him before we get into your buddy Garrett Sparks, who was wonderful last night, 15 big saves. What impact, what role is a guy like Calle Rosen expected to take up with this Maple Leafs team? Can we look at a bonus and a positive in his emergence here as a sneak peek of someone who could be a pivotal guy on the back end for the Maple Leafs when they take that next step forward?
Well, I think the plan for Rosen is to be on the bottom pairing next year when Travis Dermott moves up in the top 4, replacing Gardiner. Because unless the Gardiner situation plays out where he has to have back surgery and he may not be able to get a big free agent contract, and maybe he would be amenable to signing a 1-year deal to sort of prove his health before going back into free agency, I don't see Gardiner coming back. I think the focus is going to be on re-signing Jake Muzzin because you have to, you traded a first-round pick and a couple prospects. You want to bring Muzzin back. for the long term. But to the point of Rosen, he's got, I think it was 46 points with the Marlies this year. He was their best defenseman in the Calder Cup playoffs last year, scored a couple big goals in the Calder Cup final. So he's played in pressure situations in the SHL and with the Marlies. He can play both the left and the right side, so it gives him some versatility. But I think right now he is the sort of disaster backup in case Gardner can't go or in case Gardner gets hurt. I think they want to play him the last 4 games. They want to take a look at him. And, of course, the first game will be a pretty tough one because he's going to play his first game against the Islanders in Long Island. So throwing him from the frying pan into the fire. But that's a good bet.
I'd love that, from the frying pan into the fire. Isn't that like Jay Happ leaving the Jays and going to the Yankees? I don't know. No. I'm kidding. If there's one OG who can straighten things out for us and take them from off center to center, is our good buddy Bridget Haftlin, who has a question about Callie Rosen playing against the Islanders on Monday. Is the frying pan to the fire thing are we coddling? Does Rosen need a hug or a safe space, or is it cringy for him? Or it's like, who cares? You make several $100,000 for playing up here. You're a professional. Go in and let's see what you've got. I mean, do we need to coddle these guys, or do you think he's thinking to himself, I don't care where I have to play. Let's do it.
I'm sure he's thinking that, and I'm just looking at it from an outward perspective. But, the thing is, I'm sure Mike Babcock is saying, okay, this is going to be nothing compared to the pressure that you face against the Bruins next week, so we need to know if you can handle this.
Oh, man.
And it's like, Rosen is what he is. He is not a great two-way defender, but he, like Dermott, like Riley, and I'm not comparing him to the two, but he's a premier skater. He's a good puck carrier. He's got a good shot from the point. He's played power play for the Marlies. So he's versatile. And he can step in. He can carry the puck up the zone. But, defensively, he's not Rod Langway. Let's just say that. So, they're looking at him. They signed him to a 2-year extension. They're saying, okay, he's inexpensive. He can play in the NHL. He's got the skills to do so. He may not be the type of defenseman that we really need in terms of playing in his own zone, but we can make do with that since he's inexpensive and since he's 25 years old. But again, this team, and looking forward, this team needs probably another couple Jake Muzzin types, bigger defensemen who can play people around, and they don't have those in the organization. They have a lot of puck carriers, a lot of speedy, skilled guys, but if they bow out against Boston, you're going to need guys who can provide both aspects, the speed and the skill, and also somebody who can push people around in their own zone.
So Callie Rosen's no Rod Langway. He's more of an LC court.
No. He's more.
Speaking of forgotten Leafs, forgotten NHLers, Rod Langway.
I thought you were going to bring up Walt Podubny. No, well, Rod Langway was a pure defensive defenseman. He could not play offense. Those guys are an anachronism now. They don't exist that much anymore. Even premier defensemen like Shea Weber, they have an offensive game. So you're not going to find too many. Brooks Orpik is probably one of the few down defensemen left.
Mike, I know a lot of people who are driven by analytics and not necessarily driven by the game and by just entertainment and excitement think that this game will turn into air hockey at some point. It's not. The game goes through phases. It's a let's just say the NHL and professional hockey needs to change for the better. It needs to evolve, and we're going to see the game adopt new things, try new things, experiment with different types of play. Thankfully, all the nasty fighting and a lot of the rat garbage is gone, and that's the key. But anybody who thinks that this game will be a non-contact sport down the line is kidding themselves. And to be honest with you, if that's what you yearn for, if you want to see something on wider ice and with less human emotion and human contact and intensity, then you can watch some of the stuff that's going on in Europe. You know what I'm saying? The same way a lot of Nylander fans can follow number 29 to whichever team he's dealt to in the offseason. This is the Leafs Convo podcast for Vanguard Northeast Realty in Scarborough. So number 40. I tweeted yesterday before the game that he was going to have a great game because I like Garrett Sparks, man. If you ever watch him talk, he's an emotional guy. He's kind of like me. I really respect that kind of thing. And he's won at the AHL level. He's a good goaltender. He's just, in my opinion, not the right backup. He's not a backup goaltender. This isn't just about the skill. This is about the headspace. This is about somebody. I mean, you need to have a surgeon. You need to have somebody, a sniper. You need to have a pilot, somebody who is an astronaut. You literally need somebody who is just focused and does not get bothered by anything. Garrett Sparks yesterday had an opportunity to help this team win a game that it should have won. Did they need to win it? Well, yeah, I think they needed to win it. They didn't. And what bothers me about this guy is that when the Leafs come back to make it 2-2, just over a minute later, he gives up what turned out to be the game-winning goal. Just over a minute later. It's unacceptable in any sport, especially hockey. You give up the goal to win it for the other team less than 2 minutes after your team claws back from a 2-0 deficit to tie it. It's demoralizing, and unfortunately, this loss hangs on Garrett Sparks, and I wish the guy had better for him because I like him.
Well, the old adage about Grant Fuhr is, he'd let in 4 goals or 5 goals, but when it came down to the time to make to save the game for Edmonton, that's when he did it. So Garrett Sparks was guilty of bad timing, but that actually was the goal that was the least problem for me because CC picked the corner. But that being said, I think you said it was under 20 shots. The first 2 goals through his 5-hole, you could drive a Mack truck through that 5-hole. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like Garrett Sparks is a very confident kid. I have nothing against him other than I don't think he's an NHL goaltender or at least an NHL backup because going all the way back to the opening of training camp, when I asked him a question about adjustments that he needed to make from being an AHL starter to an NHL backup, he basically said none. And that's the wrong answer because we know that being an NHL backup means being a good support for the starter and being ready at a moment's notice. And his record this year is indicative of somebody who is not ready and not able to play once every week and a half. Now, I think Babcock should utilize his backups more and lighten the load on Freddie Anderson. But when you have Garrett Sparks, I understand why he opts to play Freddie Anderson more.
Mike, sorry to interrupt. Do we still want to lament Kyle Dubas and his decision making here?
No, because honestly, I mean, I understand if you look at it objectively, you have a 26-year-old goaltender who won a Calder Cup on a contract, making less than $800,000. You've got a 35-year-old guy who's in McElhinney who had a phenomenal year, but who's got one more year in his contract, and then he's a UFA. You got Pickard, who's an NHL experienced goaltender. You put the experienced guys on waivers, hoping one of them will sneak through because that somebody is going to claim, the Calder Cup and the AHL version of the Vezina winner. They're going, somebody was going to claim Sparks, so they were hoping that his success in the AHL carried over to the NHL. It hasn't. Mm-hmm. Now the question is, and this is where people will judge Dubas, is whether this summer, after a terrible season as a backup, he decides, okay, we need to get a backup for Freddie Anderson. Curtis McElhinney will be a free agent, but probably will cost a little more than $800,000. Will he go out and sign a backup goaltender or maybe re-sign Michael Hutchinson? Mm-hmm. Or will he keep Sparks because Sparks won a Calder Cup? That'll be the question.
So, Mike, keeping Sparks over McElhinney was a great business decision driven by numbers. It was a terrible hockey decision. But they weren't, at that point, based on the case for Sparks versus the case for McElhinney, in a position to make a hockey decision. The business decision had to be made then. So what do you do with a guy like Garrett Sparks, who you see has talent, you see has capability, has a bit of a pedigree at the level below? What do you do with a guy like that to prepare him? Well, you don't play him once or twice a month. You have to give him some opportunity, and a lot of times that opportunity is generated through the the door opening because the incumbent is injured or not playing well. Clearly, it was established early that Freddie Anderson had to be back there for this team based on its defensive inabilities. So Garrett Sparks now, you had a goaltender, a backup who you didn't have a lot of confidence in, but needed the opportunity to play. Not being able to get that opportunity based on the Leafs really not confident, Mike Babcock not confident in the entire thing and wanting to play Freddie Anderson to help this team get as forward as it possibly can. So here we are right now. Garrett Sparks has not been given enough opportunity to feel confident about himself and to deliver for this team. And it's just one decision begets the other. And you could draw a correlation with this move and Babcock and Dubas not being on the same page. But, you know, it's one thing to see things and project things and hope things turn out. It's another thing to actually have to deal with them in real time, head on. I don't know if you can really blame Mike Babcock for not giving Garrett Sparks a lot of extra time to play, because it's not like the team on the ice has given Mike Babcock enough of an opportunity or enough breathing room to be able to give Garrett Sparks that time to develop and be better, because this Leafs team has relied so heavily on Freddie Anderson to close the deal for it.
Well, last night was the first game that Freddie Anderson was not injured or sick, being a non-back-to-back game that Garrett Sparks started. Every other game, either Freddie was hurt or it was a back-to-back situation, and that's why
it's too late.
Started. And the opportunity for Sparks to sort of make that impression, like you were mentioning, he got concussed in practice by a William Nylander shot, and that's when Michael Hutchinson played 5 games. So that and that's not his fault. It just happened. But that may have been his opportunity to turn his coach into an ally. And instead, all we've seen is him. I believe he's gone 2-8 in his last 10 starts. I mean, he's been terrible. And I made a joke last night, but I'm actually really serious. Leaf fans should pray for the health of Frederik Andersen, because I'll tell you something right now. If Freddie Andersen, God forbid, got hurt, I think Michael Hutchinson would be called up to start in the playoffs.
Yeah, I wouldn't vote against that decision, because what we're seeing right now, Mike, and I hate to be so negative because it drives numbers for the podcast down. Everybody feels a little down. They want us to fanboy it up, and trust me, folks, we want to. But how can we do that when we are confronted by this? It's impossible. What kind of credibility would we have if we are dreaming in Technicolor when we are seeing reality in black and white? It's difficult right now. I don't know. Maybe the Leafs flip the switch on April 10th. I don't think they do. I don't know what else to say, Mike. We should probably wrap up here soon. I guess a couple of bonuses here. Connor Brown with a couple of goals in the last few games, some assists. Guys individually potentially preparing to up their own game to benefit the collective is a good thing. And you know how it is with playoff series, Mike. People that you don't always expect to emerge and have a great impact do. And, maybe someone on this team who's been a bit of a passenger, a bit of a contributor, a tertiary player, might be slowly positioning themselves to have or become a real force in this Boston series. And that is certainly a welcome thing for this team, because if you're just going to rely on Austin Matthews and John Tavares and Mitch Marner and pray to God William Nylander all of a sudden becomes a force, best wishes to you, but it's probably not going to turn out in your favor. Mike, let's wrap it up with a couple of final points.
Yeah, I think that one of the players, and there's no evidence of it last night because I didn't really notice him that much on the ice, but based on what he did in the playoffs last year, somebody who will step up is Patrick Marleau. I think what he's doing is probably...
He's an old man. He's ancient.
Well, honestly, I think this could be his last kick at the can. And knowing the wily veteran he is, at this point, you're not dogging it, but you're not really going out and expending 100% energy. You're going to do that on April 11th. You're going to do that when they open in Boston. You're going to open the throttle wide up. And he was their second best forward in the playoffs last year. Now, he hasn't had as good a year this year as he did last year, but I still think that there's something there that when the puck is dropped at TD Garden, he will show up. So him, Kadri has to be a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I agree. Mike, if you could change your microphone position, you sound just a little hollow there. Randy on social media, why is Sparks so bad, and what does he have on Kyle Dubas? Randy, hopefully we explained that to you a couple of minutes ago. Just another thing that I wanted to get at before we take off here, Mike. This has been the Sunday Spectacular. I know it has been anything but it has been the Sunday Spectacular. That's how we're billing it. We talk about, people on the comment section want to keep going at me because I don't know if they're New York Islanders implants or they're just angry at life and it's John Tavares' fault for scoring 45 goals. So he scores 2-foot goals. I don't know when 2-foot goals didn't matter, just in the same way that secondary assists all of a sudden don't matter. What kind of goals, what kind of offensive success is going to better contend and potentially overcome Boston? The banging the puck and going toe-to-toe with the Boston Bruins, or playing the William Nylander game, just sliding around the outside, skating around the outside, a perimeter game. Mike, someone explain this to me, how the Boston Bruins will be won. What kind of offense is it going to take to beat them? Do you have to crash and bang and score the 2-footer, or just float around the outside because you're too scared to deal with what the Boston Bruins are going to bring to you physically? Last point, and we're going to go.
Alex Ovechkin scored his 50th goal last night. He scores most of his goals from the top of the faceoff circle using a one-timer. Yeah. That goal counts the same as a 2-foot goal from John Tavares. That's all I have to say. Well,
but the thing is, though, Ovechkin, we can't – he's no dancer. He's no tiny dancer. That guy will truck you. He will do whatever he has to do to score a goal. So scoring from a one-timer up from the top of the faceoff circle is a bit different than a great zone entry, sliding around the perimeter of the rink and looking for somebody to pass to, or coming down the wing and blasting one. I think there are sexy goals, and then there are goals that are workmanlike that are required. But go ahead.
But Norm, this is the thing is, and I know you know this. This is not the 1980s. This is not Rick Vibe coming over the blue line and firing a slap shot and beating Donnie Edwards. Yeah. This is a league where the goaltenders are 6'5" and they cover up most of the net. And the only way that you score goals is by laterally moving the puck back and forth or blasting it at 100 miles an hour like Shea Weber or Alex Ovechkin.
Yeah.
I don't care if John Tavares scores his goal from just outside the crease. You need the puck to go over the goal line, and it doesn't matter. There aren't more points for scoring it from inside the blue line. So I'll take it.
What kind of offensive game is best to contend with and potentially overcome the Bruins? I mean, that's the question. And is that just part of the battle here that Mike Babcock has to strategize for? We need to figure out what kind of game we're going to take to the Bruins, how we're going to get our goals, how we're going to essentially earn our wins. And then they also have to figure out how this team is going to be competent and capable defensively to not only give itself a chance to compete and win these games, but to support and secure the damn goaltender, who could either emerge or come out of this series totally shell-shocked and deflated, or empowered because all of a sudden these guys have decided to collapse in, help him out, and, I don't know, roll up their sleeves and go to war with an adversary who has their number in almost an embarrassing fashion, Mike. It's the way she goes, buddy.
Yeah, let's just say that the next 4 games this week are not going to prove anything in terms of what is going to happen in the playoffs. It's simply get through them, get your players in the lineup, and get ready for Boston. And then, like I said, on that Thursday in Boston on April 11th, we'll see if this team shows up or if what we've seen over the second half of the season is what shows up.
You're right, Mike. I appreciate it very much. I mean, we sound depressed. We're not. The Leafs have done okay. OGs, converts, forget about if the Leafs could play like they can. Enough of that. What do you mean if they play like they can? They should be playing like they can all the time. What is it about this team right now that still leads you to believe that it is going to conquer Mount Boston Bruin? What have you seen that indicates to you that this team is on pace? Inside the comment section or on social media, at I am Norman James, at Mike in Buffalo, at the Leafs Convo. Let's get ready for the Islanders, my friend. I think the Leafs will, I don't know. I don't want to predict anything. I'm going to try to be positive. I'm going to try, Mike. Doing my best. It's been the Sunday Spectacular. Mike Augello in Buffalo, Norman James in London. Thanks for listening, folks. Bye, Mike.
Thanks, Norman.